My name is Anijo Matthew, and I'm the Dean of the Institute of Design here at Illinois Tech in Chicago. Thank you for joining us today. It's a beautiful day today, so I'm happy that you all made it and you're enjoying the time inside. Welcome to our home at the Kaplan Institute at Illinois Tech. This is the first academic building in many years, and we are proud to be in this building. It is a beautifully designed building by local architect John Ronan, who also teaches at the architecture school here. So we are actually very proud to be here. We are here today to celebrate Italian Design Day. This is a day in which Italian consulates worldwide get together to celebrate. This is one day where they celebrate design across the world. Today we are proud to co-host this with, of course, the consulate, Italian Consulate General in Chicago, but also our partners in Politecnico di Milano School of Design. They are joining us online. You can see there is Dean Francesco Zurlo, Professor Anna Meroni, and Michele Melazzini, who's joining us from all the way from Milan, where I heard it's raining, not snowing. As you may have seen in the program, we have assembled an illustrious group of people to talk about food innovation and how design can play a role in this. But before we get into that conversation, I would like to invite Consul General Mario Bartoli to talk a little bit about why we are doing this and why this is important, why the conversation is important to him. Everybody, please give a round of applause for Consul General Bartoli.
Thank you very much, Professor Matthew, Professor Zurlo, Professor Melazzini, dear panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like first to express my heartfelt gratitude to both our hosts, Professor Matthew and Professor Melazzini, for their commitment to building up an event that marks a new, allow me to say, higher level of cooperation with the Consul General and the Italian Minister of Foreign Affairs, while setting the pace for more ambitious avenues of cooperation in the future. And thank you also for your extra effort in negotiating a suitable timetable for the blizzard with the gods of the snow. Thank you very much for that. Allow me also to express my deep gratitude to today's panelists who have accepted the daring task of cogitating about processes and visions that stretch out in the wide prairies of the future, of our future. And allow me to say a few words in Italian. Voglio solo inviare un saluto cordiale a chi è collegato da Milano, con una parola di conforto. Sono certo che oggi siete più al caldo di noi. Today we celebrate the 9th edition of the Italian Design Day in the world. Since its inception in 2017, the Italian Minister of Foreign Affairs conceived of the event as an opportunity to promote design as a distinctive element of the brand Italy through a wide-ranging programs of initiatives organized by embassies and consulates around the world with the participation of design ambassadors who will share their experiences as designers or, as in today's event, engage the local ecosystem into a dialogue on perspectives pertaining the past and the future of design, and the aspiration generating and inspiring the design processes. Indeed, as the project of the Day of the Italian Design in the World developed year after year, the Italian Design Day has delved increasingly into the role and responsibility of design as a transformative agent, generating space for reflections on examples of urban regenerations and transformation, with design propping up new paradigms of community engagement and sustainability. And allow me to stress this. There is as much of Italy in this approach as there is in the unique combination of craft, sublime aesthetics, and functionality that has made Italian design a standard bearer of modern beauty. And standard, I believe, is the key word, as it reminds us of the constant strive for higher standards that defines in such a vivid way what we call the Made in Italy. Design is a powerful tool, not just to aim for higher standards, but also to facilitate the convergence of different communities at the national, regional, and global level towards those higher standards. Indeed, in this respect, we can consider design also a very powerful diplomatic tool. And I believe that the value of design and the crucial contribution of Italian design as a purveyor of higher standards in terms of quality, sustainability, inclusiveness, and environmental protection will resonate strong in the panel discussion that will follow, as the food industry and the processes that drive the food industry are an extremely interesting and complex domain where many cultural, economic, social issues are at play and at stake. And I'm very happy that we have today a strong voice from the food industry and from the Italian food industry joining the discussion. Thank you once again, Professor Matthew and Professor Melazzini and all our panelists. I wish you all a fruitful and engaging discussion. Thank you very much.
So when the Council General asked us if we could host this event, there was no better partner to do it than with the School of Design in Milan at Politecnico di Milano, with whom we have long and large established collaborations. We have students from Milan who come here in the fall, and our students are actually flying to Milan in March. So we have long and established collaborations with this group. So I'm very proud to invite the faculty of Politecnico di Milano School of Design, and I'm going to ask Dean Francesco Zurlo to say a few words about how he sees design and how Politecnico di Milano approaches this field from their side. Francesco?
Thank you, Anisha. Thank you very well for the invitation. So we are very glad to stay with you tonight. I've been there maybe 5 years ago, so I can imagine the audience on the stairs in front of the floor. So I'm quite excited to stay with you tonight. This afternoon, because here is night, and we have 10 Celsius degrees, your 50 Fahrenheit degrees. So we are a little bit, warmer than you. I'd like also to thank the Consul, Mario Bartoli, and of course the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for organizing and supporting this International Design Day. As you know, the International Design Day is related to a specific issue, and for this year the topic is exploring possibilities to avoid inequalities. And this is referring to the topic of the Triennale of Milano, Triennale di Milano, so the exhibition we will have in a couple of months, starting in May. So why design? So usually when we talk about design, this is the trivial interpretation of design. We refer to the design of the appearance, the aesthetical appeal of products, but we need to go over this interpretation, even if this interpretation is the most relevant for Italian design. We need to consider the evolution of design. So design today is also designing, let's say, interfaces, interactions, ways of interaction. It's also designing services, designing experiences, and let's say it's also designing thoughts, way of thinking. It is because of a peculiarity of the design approach. This is a universal approach. It's not just the Italian, what we call design thinking, the way we face problems, so the way we try to solve problems. And we have, let's say, a different mindset, so to face complexity today. You know that complexity is a key word today. So when we face every human activity, we are in front of complexity. We are in front of uncertainty. we have ambiguity, we have volatility of situations, and even related to technologies, related to societal challenges and so on. So my specific expertise is in strategic design. So I used to compare the idea of design with the idea of strategy. They, let's say, share the same approach, the same mindset, because strategy is a kind of circular thinking. It's a way to zoom in, zoom out problems. And this is typical of design, it's typical of design thinking. The strategy needs a system thinking approach to face problems. This is the same for design and for strategic design. We use as methods the generation of doubts every time we face new problems. We know that we need to consider every time we face complexity, bias and biases, prejudices. So we used to browse within biases. We used to offer our capabilities to facilitate conversation into communities within the groups to find common sense, to find sense making, let's say. So every time we want to start with a new idea, a new solution, a new project. As the consul mentioned, so we are diplomatics. We use diplomacy also to start conversation with people speaking different languages. I'm used to say that design is a kind of polyglot. So we used to learn many disciplines, and we used to interact with different experts, with different scholars, and so on. In this moment, for instance, we are exploring with an exhibition called Interdependencies, the opposites that we live every day. So opposites are related to the relationship between center and boundaries, the relationship between human and what is called more than human, the relationship between artificial and natural. So we are suffering today wars and conflicts because there is a subtle, a tight, let's say, polarization. And our goal with this exhibition, inviting our colleagues coming from almost 30 international schools, including in the Institute of Design of IIT, is proposing a different way of interpreting these polarizations. So understanding that between polarization you have a lot of different nuances. And I'd like to invite you to visit this exhibition that will be during the Design Week from April 4th to April 16th here in Milan. Let's say food, that's the issue of this conversation today, is the epiphenomenon of this approach, because you need to face the problem of nutrition, considering the systems behind the food, considering that food is a cultural act, it's not just a nutritional act. So we need to understand when we face the problems related to food that there are too many aspects to be considered. We will discuss in this conversation, I know, about this idea of transition and design. Let's say there was a very important author in Italy, Ennio Flaiano. He used to say that we are in a transition period, then as usual. Yeah, because humans are always in a transition time. But the speed of the transition we are living today, it's really different from the past. So we need to create the antibodies, let's say, and also to, let's say, face this speed. And I think that maybe with this conversation we will see some of these possible antibodies to face the problem of food and the related problem to food. Thank you so much for this interesting conversation.
Thank you, Francesco. I know you can't see the audience, but they're here and they're applauding for you. So I'm just going to start off by giving you a little sense of why we want to do this at the Institute of Design. When I say I'm the dean of a design school, the first question I get asked is, what do you mean by design? Are you a fashion design school? Do you design cars? Do you build architecture? Do you do UX design, like Francesco said? This is a very tough question for me to answer. These are all valid questions, but they do not describe what we do or our colleagues in Polyme do. We do all of these things. We do influence fashion and product and UX and architecture, but that's not all we do. We do a whole lot more. We're not like any other design school in the world. We were founded in 1937, 88 years ago, by a Hungarian emigre who came here from the German school of design called Bauhaus. We were the new Bauhaus in the US. And the whole idea was, how can you understand how this new industrial revolution technology intersects with human needs and aspirations? That was a question we were asking then. But like Francesco said, a lot has changed since then. So I'm going to posit a new point of view for you to think about. In the context of everything happening around the world, politically, socially, culturally, we may argue that the debate of our times is around political ideologies. I actually don't think that's true. I think the most important debate of our time is around temporal perspectives. It is a question about what do we do today versus what do we invest in for tomorrow. And there are two parts to this ideology. So indulge me for a minute. Think about your own life as you start saving for your future, right? There are things that you can do today. You can buy great things. I mean, clearly I'm not a fashion person, but I could go out and buy the best fashion in the world and spend all of my professor's salary on that. Or I could invest in my retirement account so that as far as I can see, I live comfortably. This, to me, is the problem of our times. Do we invest in things that are good today, that will give us a good life today, or do we invest in things that are going to keep us moving tomorrow? I'm not saying these are mutually exclusive. The ideal scenario would be, of course, to think of both at the same time, but where do we stand politically, socially, and culturally? The world, driven by Milton Friedman's economics, has turned to focus primarily on shareholder value as its driving focus. This means that every idea we develop, that everything we do, is increasingly seen from the lens of financialization. How does it make money for us? But it's time to rethink, don't you think? In fact, organizations that think beyond financial metrics, they understand that their value to the world is not through products that create wealth for a small group of people. They understand that their value to the world comes from investing in their stakeholders, the people that work for them, the users of their products, the societies that they're in. Great companies from Italy did that. They do continue to do that today. They're not creating single generation value. They're creating multi-generational value. They know that it is not enough to invest in just the time value of money. It's also important to invest in the money value of time. as our former board chair would say. But to do this kind of thinking, we need a new type of leader. I can assure you that leader isn't going to be found in the corridors of business schools. Instead, we need to cultivate people who take a human-centered systems design approach to persistent areas of concern, like healthcare, food, education, climate, data science, all of the things that our human species is trying to deal with today, not just for today, but for tomorrow. We are training here at ID the leaders of the future, who are not just thinking about what is desirable, viable, and feasible, but also what is inclusive, sustainable, and just. We are training people who can apply an analytical and synthetic mindset to the future of our world. Our students, for example, can get 2 degrees in 2 years. They can get an MDes and an MBA in 2 years. Just think of that. The students who graduate from here know how to think from the human lens and from the business lens. So let's circle back to my first question. What do we mean by design? Why are we doing this here in a design school? We are doing this because we believe that design is a new lens by which we can look at the world, by which we can anticipate the speed of the transitions that Francesco was talking about, the scale and the complexity of those transitions. Here we work with graduate students, C-suite leaders, organizational leaders to imagine a world that we want to live in. We say we want to design the world that we want to live in. And in order for that, to do that, we need a whole new way of thinking that is very different from how to design cars or clothes or products. It's much bigger than that. So at this event today, we have decided to look at one of those persistent areas of concern, food. Our faculty member, Veslin, will be proud of me when I say this. Do you know the annual economic value of food waste is $960 billion annual, globally? Just to give you comparison, that's the economy of Switzerland. That's how much food we waste every year. How might we use a design lens to examine such gnarly problems in the food industry? How are leaders in the industry thinking about these futures? How are they creating shareholder value? How are they creating stakeholder value? How are they creating multi-generational value? That is the focus of today's conversation. So in this next part, my colleague and friend Michele Melazzini from Italy, Milan, will introduce the amazing panelists who are going to talk to us today about this and take us on this journey. Michele is a research fellow at Politecnico, and he's been teaching at the design school for many years. And in this panel, you're going to hear 3 perspectives from the different panelists. They're going to talk about food innovation from 3 lenses. Product, how do we create the next best food product? Systems, how do we tackle problems like food waste or food procurement that cuts across multiple companies and systems and organizations? And finally, our friends at Telia are prototyping a new type of innovation platform that allows companies to break through their organizational silos to look at these problems. So the third lens is platforms. So products, systems, and platforms. So I hope you enjoy the panel. Michele, do you want to take over and invite the panelists, introduce and invite the panelists over? Thank you, everybody.
Yes, I would be more than happy to welcome everyone on the stage. And thank you, Anigio, for such an introduction, and also to Francesco, to the Institute of Design, for having us. I think I was supposed to setting the stage from this side of the world, but I think you already set in a very how can I say more? I think I will be just facilitating and gluing such a debate. I'm very excited, to be honest. I'm a bit nervous because it's the first time that I'm moderating a debate with an ocean in between. But this power of connecting different brains from different sides of the world is exactly how I feel design and design teaching in my professional life. So everything is already been said by Anidra in terms of how we are going to start from the Zoom into the product level until the platform level and in between the system level. And I will do this with the privilege of interacting with 5 panelists, which I gladly and I would love to call on the stage, which I can see from here. So please welcome on stage Professor Wesley Ashton from the Institute of Design. A big round of applause to her. She is Professor of Environmental Management and Sustainability. And moreover, she is the co-director of the Food System Action Lab. Thank you, Wesley, for being there or here. And then let me introduce also a colleague of mine from this side of the ocean. I'm very happy to have here and thankful to have here Professor Anna Meroni from the School of Design of Polimi. She's a professor with a long experience focused on service and strategic design, moreover on sustainability to foster social innovation, participation, and local development. In addition to that, Anna, she's the co-founder of the Polimi Desis Lab and of the International Desis Network. So, grazie Anna. Thank you, Anna, for being here with me and with us. I want to call on the physical stage now from the side of the first representative from the professional world and from the company, Jean-Pierre Comte, which is the president of Giovanni Rana Meal Solution. And as he already allowed me, I can call him JP. JP has 25 years of global experience in fast-moving consumer goods. He worked also in Barilla and P&G, a very long experience. Looking forward to hearing from his perspective. Thank you, JP, for being here. I'm not hearing the applause, but I suppose that they are there. I see some hands clapping. And then I want to then call on the stage also another member of the debate, which is Loren Cremona. Loren is the head of Ferrero Innovation Center. Thank you, Loren, for being here. In North America, he's leading this innovation center in Chicago. And most of his professional life is driving strategies and plans for popular food brands and at national and regional and global scale. Among the different brands, Loren is also taking care of brands like Kinder and Nutella, which is, I think they are quite well known across the oceans. And then finally, last but not least, as we have to say every time, please welcome on stage Margaret Muller, she is simultaneously the CEO of the Executives Club of Chicago and an operator partner at Tilia Holdings, which is a private equity firm focused on making the food supply chain safer, healthier, and more sustainable. So please, a big applause to all the members of the debate, and also to myself to be, like, say, recharged and have the enough energy for moderating such a wise panel, which I will guide in this way. So how we're going to do that? So we're going to have a round of questions per each of the panelists. I will then start in a while. After this round of questions, I would be more than happy to opening the conversation also from the audience. So feel free to raise your hand physically and then interact with the audience, and then closing with some remarks. So I'm not gonna steal any more time to the introduction. And I would love to start, if you agree, everyone, with the, let's say, from the product level on this food system that we are approaching from a design perspective. And I want to ask JP, if you want to start with me. I want to ask you, just to break the ice, how are you observing like consumer behavior shift, and how these transitions are shaping how the design food experience is changing in actual times from your long but also actual feeling, gut feeling?
Is key. Okay, so when we design some products for the plates of the American people, and it's true everywhere in the world. So we try to meet the taste of the people we serve. Okay, what's new and not so new, and I'm sure that we'll talk a lot about it later today, is that there is a growing need for convenience. So people, either for lack of skills or lack of time, or both, tend to spend less and less time in the kitchen. And so today, when we design fresh field pasta, when we design ready-to-eat meals, we try to address this need for convenience. And last but not least, in the pyramid of taste, convenience, the third element is about planet and sustainability. So we, especially on the youngest generation, there is a growing need for food which is more respectful of you as a human body and the environment we live in. Okay, so these are the three things today that we have in mind now when we work on all the old tools. Could be focus groups, could be consumer panels, could be whatever, all new tools using technology, artificial intelligence, etc. What we keep in mind are those three elements: taste, sustainability, and convenience.
So thank you, JP. We are not hearing like very well from here, but I got your point. I'm very thankful to you for kicking off the conversation. Just for having like the first round is for bringing on the table very different perspectives. So for the audience, you're gonna be like impressed by the different perspective, I'm assuming. So I want to jump into like the from this side. So I want to ask to Prof. Anna Meroni just to give her perspective, moreover, on what are the most critical leverage point where design can drive systemic change in food ecosystem. And from your point of view, Anna, where to start a systemic change led by design? Thank you, Anna.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well? Yep. I hope so. So thank you, Michele. Easy question. Of course, I have a big consideration of designers and the four of us, but I don't believe we are superhero. So we have learned, and we are learning to be humble when we approach whatever system thinking or ambitious application of design to things which are not so clearly defined and not so clearly confined. And so I like to start. I have a quite long experience with food, and I used to be, once upon a time, more than today, a bit extreme in my decisions. So go for local, go for biological, go for, kind of that. Now, when you grow older, you start to be less polarized, let's say. Anyway, so what are we able to do as designers that others are not able to do, or at least not do as well as we can do that. We're not engineers, we are not management, we are not managers, we are not food scientists. So what are we able to do? Well, we are able sometimes to have perspectives of things, to see problems, and sometimes also because of our unconsciousness, because that's part of probably the way of being a designer, we are fearless, and so we connect things, we connect dots, we see things happen, and we try to make a sense out of what we see. So if you consider food and the food system, let's take it at a local level, for instance, so at the city level, at the region level. It's not that hard to see the connection between the different actors of a system. Who are the actors of a system? Are all the players which coexist in a space, in a place, in a time. And so if you start doing this exercise where some flows of food, some connections are clear, some other are less clear, but still, let's say the food system has by necessity a kind of connected web, well, you start to see, okay, these actors are doing this, these other actors are doing that, what they're doing together, what they're not doing together. And so all of a sudden you start to ask yourself, okay, but why don't these actors do that with the others? So why are they doing this alone? Why they are not sharing this opportunity or this also data? Why they are not combining their activities so to reach a kind of circular solution? And so when you have this kind of perspective, you know, when you start looking something from outside, you see connections and opportunities area that someone else maybe don't see because does not see because they are too much into. And so this is the basic for us, for designers, basically, to start working, for instance, with scenarios. So once you understand or try to understand a little bit how a combination of actors work together, you start to project this in the future and you start to explore different possibilities for these actors to do things together. And in our experience, this is the beginning of systemic change. So I see our role and our humble capacity as designers to see these possibilities, see these opportunities, and to make the actors sit around the table and share these opportunities, having a scenario or more than one as vision for the future that can benefit all the system, not only one singular actor. And so to conclude, this is what we do. At least we try to do. We try to very often look at system from outside, from above in some way, and try to see how the actors behave or could behave, and make them discuss about how they could do things together. And this is very effective in food because food is a loss. Food loss is also an economic loss for all the actors, for instance. And so to find a way to combine their activities is also, for instance, a way to close loops that otherwise would not be closed.
Thank you very much, Anna, for your point of view. I see some keywords reading among the lines of your in-depth exploration on the systemic role of activator that design in a humble way can have. And I want to reflect on this aspect of connecting and also identifying patterns and how this impacts on the whole system. And I would ask if Margaret Muller might join with me in this conversation in maybe sharing with all of us the perspective on the role of partnership and data sharing in which kind of role this aspect can play in enhancing the efficiency across the food system, from your experience, from Tilia experience, and also from your point of view.
Can you all
I hope that I can hear you properly now.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Is this working? Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I also come from a non-traditional background into business. My PhD is in sociology, similar in terms of a deep understanding of human behavior, attitudes, motivations, why they do what they do, and then using that to help clients grow their businesses in ways that are meeting those needs. So that's how I built my business. And now I'm in the nonprofit world, but I'm also working with Tilia. And so I'm a little sheepish because this is really Eric's vision for the firm. So I'll do my best to do it a great service. Pull it closer? Okay. Like this. Is this better? Yeah. Maybe can I take it out so I can just... Is this better? Okay. This is easier for me to talk this way rather than leaning in. So Eric had this vision for the firm that was more than just an investment firm, but is really going to transform the industry. And I know we often talk about things being vertically integrated. You know, that's a big word these days. And Tilia is, interestingly, horizontally integrated. So we are everything that is in the food supply chain, not ag and no brands, but everything in between. And so you can imagine ingredients and formulations, packaging and manufacturing, distribution, warehousing, storage, and food safety testing. So everything that has to happen in the middle to get something from the farm or where it's created onto your plate. And so with another faculty member here, Larry Keeley, they had this idea that ultimately this could become a platform company. So that you could imagine this collection of providers going to market in a way that now provides a unified solution for all the big food manufacturers that we serve. So our end clients are all the brands that are in your kitchen. You've never heard of our companies, but they're actually responsible for making, in part, everything that you have in your kitchen. And so they created this design protocol for the firms because they are not used to thinking this way. These tend to be family-owned companies, grew up in a certain way of going to business that was very functional and often just based on relationships. And this is oversimplifying it. It's not this silly, but it's almost as, you need product, we have product, buy product from us. And that worked, you know, for a while. But now that they're really trying to scale and be more innovative, they need to be thinking differently about what is it that their customers ultimately need from them, and they're not used to thinking that way. So these protocols were designed to help them change how they think about what is it that their end customers, the big CPGs, actually need from them, and what do their end customers, all of you in this room, ultimately looking for them. And so these innovations are incremental, they are not transformative, but it starts them along the path. And what we found, each company came up with something very different. I mean, it ranged everything from one of our baking companies has this grain that is simultaneously like low glycemic index, high fiber, it also tastes pretty good. And so they did their innovation intent around how do we brand this and bring this to market in a way that's different than just healthy. One of our other companies is in the logistics space, and they realized that what their customers really needed from them was real-time information on availability and timing. And so what is a way that they can get that information to their customers? And that's going to require some tech investment and some partnerships. One of our formulations companies realize that their customers would like to be able to put their ingredients together in interesting ways, kind of your own Build-A-Bear formulation, and that they can self-serve in coming up with some solutions. So you can see it was a really wide range. But in addition to just thinking about innovation intent, it really changed the culture within these companies. Particularly the warehouse one, In that situation, it was two very different companies that had come together. Tilly had bought both these companies. They are geographically dispersed. We're still operating as separate brands in the marketplace, so had different cultures, didn't live and work near each other. And by working on this project, they started to see how they could all come together and innovate in a meaningful way using this design thinking. And even if they end up not necessarily executing on that project in the time period that we are owning them, just getting them to start thinking differently about their customers and what they need from them, and getting away from the functional to the more humanistic, I think is what's really transformed them. I can, tell you lots more, but I'll just stop there for now. Is that right, Eric?
Thank you very much, Margaret. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your perspective. We are getting richer and richer, and having diversity on the point of view of the food system and where we can intervene in this transition. And I want to ask Wesley, sorry for the bad pronunciation of your name, to jump into the conversation, moving back to the system perspective. And I'd love to hear from you, from your experience. How can design help in transitioning from, we were discussing a bit before, just starting this perspective, how design can help transitioning from linear to a sort of regenerative and circular food system. So how in this case design can play such a systemic role, I would say. Wesley, please.
Thank you, Michele. In our work here at the Institute of Design, we think about different roles that designers play in any type of system. They have an important role in helping people that they're working with to vision new possibilities. Right? So bringing creativity to think about the future, to think about things that have not existed. And so this visioning skill, bringing in these futures thinking, thinking critically about the future, is a very important skill in designers. We also help people to visualize what is possible, seeing their roles in systems, and bringing the very complexity that we have in our food system into easier to understand ways, so people can see where they are situated in a system and what some possibilities might be. It also helps to reduce the complexity of these systems so that people can see more opportunities for change. I think designers also have a really important skill in facilitating and structuring conversations in ways that can be very generative, right? So it's not just a meeting that we're facilitating, but we're structuring conversations in a way to really drive and move from ideas into impact. And I would say one final way that I think is really critically important is in storytelling. Because we know that for systems change, we really need to change the narrative, change the story about what's possible. So we talk a lot here about values-based systemic design, right? So we are transitioning to systems, and all systems have values, whether or not we acknowledge and explicitly state what those values are. So in our work, we are trying to really be more explicit, but what are the values that we are trying to bring forward in a transition? So just an example of, some of the work. So Margaret, I love, the example that you shared. So here in Illinois, we are working a lot around institutional food procurement and trying to bring more local producers into institutional supply chains, right? So when we think about institutional supply chains, we're thinking about the hospitals, Chicago Public Schools that serves 300,000 kids per day, right? These are huge systems, and it's traditionally been very difficult for small local producers to get into these supply chains because of the sheer scale that's needed. But working in partnership with the City of Chicago government and nonprofit partners, we're helping to identify some specific cases and using that to open up the imagination about what's possible. So I'll give you one example. You know, here in the Midwest, we tend to eat a lot of meat for protein. And on the north side of the city, there is a tofu manufacturer whose name is Jenny Yang, who has a company called Phoenix Bean Tofu that is now being served on the menu in some Chicago public schools. And at first, it's like, okay, what is this weird tofu stuff? And I remember having a conversation with her that the first time she went to like a big farming conference in Illinois, some of the farmers who were like, what, you want to take soy and make it into tofu to feed people? Well, we're only accustomed to using soy for feeding animals. But she's now worked and built a relationship with a local organic soybean manufacturer that's processed in Illinois and then shipped to her facility to make tofu that's now sold in the schools and served to kids. And they, designed the products to make it fun for the kids to eat, right? So the point that JP you were making about taste, right? It's introducing new things to people and changing the story about what's possible for our food system. So in our work, we are trying to highlight these cases, right? So we're opening up the imagination and illustrating, visualizing the pathway and the steps it takes for such a small local manufacturer to get a large institutional contract with Chicago Public Schools. So I think design has a really vital role to play in visualizing, right? Opening up our imagination and helping to move from idea into action.
Thank you, Wesley. Such an inspiring also remarks at the end in this role of in visualizing, I would say, in also in connection with, to be honest, with the connecting the dots and recognizing the pattern that Anna was mentioning before. I'm assuming that in a complex and an innovative organization like Ferrero, it's also not easy, Laurent, to connecting the dots internally. So I might ask you from the side of the company, so inside your company, how do you connect in order to cope with this complexity that we are discussing? How do you do your company and you foster collaboration between different units inside the company, R&D, marketing, design teams, in nurturing innovation that should be in line with the changes and the challenges that we are discussing this morning or this evening? Laurent.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I'll try to answer you in a simple way. Generating innovation in a company like Ferrero has always been a moment when, let's say, we needed to have around the table people with very different background. We don't think that innovation comes from research and development team working alone or marketing people working in another room. So this is something that has been pretty much into the Ferrero culture since the origin. So Mr. Michele Ferrero, who was the founder of the company, had this approach of having around the table all the different professional background that could bring their point of view and bringing also very early some element that could really add to the innovation process some feedback very, very early. So this, I think, is important, and the more we grow, the more we need to have this table that in some cases is a virtual table, not always we can have a real table where all the people around, we need them to bring their contribution. We think that diversity of people around the table are the best way to generate successful innovation. So this is a first element. Then, if I can add, there is another thing that is pretty much relevant for our company. Let's distinguish innovation and really breakthrough innovation. So the innovation that changes really the way the company operates in the market by changing dramatically, I would say, the way a need is, let's say, fulfilled, a solution is brought to consumers. Now, this kind of innovation happen quite rarely. It's rare that we can invent a new Kinder Surprise, a new Nutella. It's not happening every year, unfortunately, so it can be every 5, 10 years. And these projects are extremely long and risky. It takes 10 years to develop a system from the idea of having a product of chocolate with surprise and the product being on the market, because there is an industrial complexity we need to understand. We need also to let's say, learn from what happens in real life to, let's say, address and modify a little bit. Now, the issue is that business leaders, think about managers that manage business unit, tend to have a time frame that is much shorter. They need, and that's of course needed, to be focused on current year, the next 3 years as a maximum. Now, how can you have let's say, those projects that have a 10-year horizon with a high risk, and I would say at the beginning, big investments, growingly, and let's say this other dimension that is, I need to make volumes, sales, profit in the short to medium term. So what has been done in our company is have teams that work under different responsibilities. You have got people that work on long-term innovation. Innovation Center here in Chicago does this, and they are at the first stage of innovation quite separated from what is the remaining part of the company. Then, when we are much more defined in terms of having a solution to bring to the consumers, then business jumps in. But to protect an early innovation, the idea we always had in Ferrari is that we need to have it in a kind of greenhouse that is separated from the factory. That's, I don't know if I answered to your question, but it's, you need to have all the people around. But then there is a moment when you need to separate a little bit the teams from, let's say, business, because if not, you are not able to land big innovation.
Thanks a lot, Laurent, for your contribution and also for bringing to the stage and to the conversation, I would say, one peculiar tension in dealing with transformation and innovation. So this is indeed a strong tension between risk and short-term profit, and then lovely to hear how Ferrero Innovation Center is handling this. And speaking about tension, I think it's related. We have kind of an elephant in the room. So JP, if you don't mind, I want to ask you to give me your perspective on another tension, which is, we had some conversation, of course, and how can we balance like the intention of designing, proposing, in a sustainable and responsible way, but yet we have to be a commercially viable product. So how can we balance these other tension, because this is the other big tension that we have to handle, both from the let's say business side and design side, practitioner side, academic side. So we have indeed, again, I think the other constraint is time, but also we have this two polarity of responsible and sustainable, and at the same time viable and profitable proposal within company. What do you think, JP?
Yes, I will be back to your question, Michele, in a minute. Let me 1 minute build on what Laurent just said on the art and science to bring together short-term and long-term, different cultures, which is extremely important, because we talk a lot about systems and processes, etc., but nothing will ever replace the human being touch. Okay, and it's not by case, by the way, that you have two French people there. It's not that we are better than Italians or better than Americans. Okay, it's not the point that I want to make today. The point is that we have been brought as the heads of businesses which were born and raised in Italy, but operating in the US, not by case. Okay, because probably in these companies there was a tension, a cultural tension between the center, could be in Alba or Luxembourg for Ferrero, it's in Verona for Rana, or Parma for Barilla, and the local market, where suddenly people were not able to work together effectively, because they were coming from different cultural backgrounds, because they had different agendas, they had different objectives, and they were seeing the world and the consumer that you need to serve through different lenses. And this is where the art comes together with the science of some managers able to bridge the two sides of the pond and make sure that the magic happens. Then when an Italian and American, they work together, occasionally with a French, okay, it can create the magic. Okay, so that's super important. And I think that when we talk about design, we see softwares, systems, and etc. But it's, sorry for my French, it's bullshit if you don't have the human beings to make them work. Okay, so that's on the story. On the story, top line, bottom line, short term, long term, cure the balance sheet, or cure the planet, or some public health issues that we have. Yes, there is a tension. Okay, and as a company, our mission number one is to continue to make profit, because if you don't make profit, you cannot pay the people working for you, and so you disappear. Okay, so that's the mission number one. But it cannot be the beginning and the end of your mission. And so I'm going to take a couple of examples. Now, when we came to the American market, the fresh filled pasta was usually packed in these plastic trays that you can still find on some brand or some customers. And the genius of our founder and owner was to come to the market with a packaging which was, one, more distinctive, so to try to stand out versus what the competition was doing, and two, more responsible for the environment. And so if you go in a Mariano's, in a Jewelosco today, you will find these paper-like bags of Rana, which use much less packaging that the category was usually made today. So again, you can find the moment where the financial imperatives meet the sustainability, planet care, environment imperatives. And this is, I think, the responsibility when we design an organization, when we design a new category to target, to have in mind not only the bottom line, but also these aspects which ultimately can be a win-win.
Thank you, JP, and thank you also for remarking the importance of human touch in this in the conversation, and for adding your perspective on that. I might try to connect this human touch, calling again on the conversation. Anna, I was reflecting, listening in these last two perspective from the companies. Do you think that we can have also a human touch in a sort of leveraging on communities in your experience? I'm basing on your experience in research, and do you think that community-driven initiatives can have a role in also nurturing a behavioral change in terms of course, responsible way of adopting new consuming systems and new consuming behavior. Anna, what do you think?
Yes, thank you, Michele. Again, I don't want to be naive, and because sometimes we overestimate the role of communities and what is bottom up, and that's absolutely true, that this is super important. But we have to understand how to combine the big trends and big things happening with the very small initiatives. But I want to ask you a question. Where do you think it comes, this interest that today is quite widespread for vegetarianism, veganism, or this kind of attitudes? You know, changing food behaviors is hard. We are all very rooted in our comfort food, in our routines, in what we like. And so why all of a sudden so many people decided to turn their mind, or to at least try to go for other kind of choices? This is for environmental motivation, for animal well-being, for health motivation, many reasons. Well, I have my idea about this, that in a way, all of a sudden, their food environment has been enriched and diversified by the presence of something that could have been not mainstream, but even very small, but powerful to influence the feeling of people. So the food environment, probably you are familiar with this concept, is all we can reach, the food we can reach, we can afford, we can access in our everyday life through different channels. And the problem is that our food environments are getting poorer and poorer, unfortunately, also in Italy. So we tend to lose diversity. I think if we can, and this is also part of the work of designers, add complexity and diversity to the food environment of people, we can drive changes much better than simply, proposing new products or services at a wider scale. And this may really come from the bottom. They come from initiatives which are very rooted in a place, which are maybe less functional to our complicated life, but more human. And so things we love to do because we feel like we are at home, or we feel like we like the people, or we feel like we have an empathy with what happens there. So to conclude, I trust very much the possibility and the capability of designers together with policymakers and with companies, but anyway, it's a matter of vision, first of all, to enrich the food environment of people. So try to add small things that can show alternative systems. And of course, then we all are living in a very complicated situation. No solution fits all, that's very clear. We may still go to the supermarket purchasing the mass products, and that's fine. They are super good very often. But we also discover that maybe once a month we can purchase the vegetables from the nearby farmer. And this, to me, is a step toward transition. I do believe more and more in incremental changes more than into radical changes to really change and transform the things.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna, for embracing the challenge and connecting this aspect into the conversation. And I think we are collecting a lot of perspective. I have already other questions in my mind. I'm taking a lot of notes, I'm not seeing the physical audience, but I'm expecting that you might have some additional question to mind. So if you all agree over there, I'm seeing that behind the windows, things are getting wider and wider. Do you want to jump in the conversation with us? So from the other audience, I want to start a Q&A session. If Anijo, I see you, Anijo, helping me physically over there. Do anyone want to jump into and exploit this time for having the possibility to ask some questions to our panelists connected to the conversation that we are having?
Hi, first, thanks for the presentations. I was curious about how design can help with the food deserts. For example, here in Chicago, where there's a lack of access to healthy foods. And how can design also help with instruction and teaching to how to eat more healthy, creating those kind of spaces to learn how to cook, for example. As the one lady from Italy mentioned, that we're finding to diminish that nutritional value due to circumstances, changing cultures. But I record my days growing up in Italy that you'd have the open market, everybody would buy real food, you would know how to make it, the ones that were provided it would offer it at a reasonable price, and now we don't seem to have that option very often. Usually our open farmer markets are in higher, more affluent areas within the city, not in the poor food deserts. What are some of these design challenges that are actually going to be implemented to help, for example, in the city of Chicago?
I'll just say that I just saw the headline today that the city of Chicago is now moving towards opening food markets in these areas. They tried food grocery stores, and I think that was too challenging for these large retailers to figure out how to make that work. And so now they're pivoting to a smaller market format to exactly that. I just saw the headline. I have only half read the article, so I encourage you all to just look it up, and I'll look it up after this too. And also CPS, so Chicago Public Schools is the largest farmland owner in the city of Chicago. They're actually growing a lot. So in my kids' school, my kids go to a CPS school, they have a garden and they're learning how to garden and then they're eating that food. And I'm sure many of you know of Alice Waters, and we had her an event, and she's been trying to transform this around the country in putting gardens in schools and using garden classrooms, not to teach gardening, to teach about the world, to teach about biology, science, history, all sorts of things, but doing it through these gardens and getting kids more exposed to understanding where food actually comes from. Because I know the way I was raised, I thought food came from the grocery store. And so once you can better appreciate, where food actually comes from. So I think a lot of good things grounded in design thinking are happening right here in Chicago. Unfortunately, like many things in Chicago, we don't hear about them, but I'll pass it off to JP.
Yeah, no, your question is very valid. I think that we touched many points related to the issues of what we call the food system. Okay, we talked about food waste, we talked about food access for some communities. All of that is very true. The fact and the matter that it will not be one component of the chain which will find a solution. Okay, back to the design, we all together, from agriculture, big tech, food manufacturers, public authorities, NGOs, we will need to address one of these issues. Okay, it can come from someone, can come from the NGOs first, and then suddenly the whole food chain will come together. But if we go as we went so far, one after the other, I'm afraid that will not solve these kind of issues. Yeah, it's a matter of design, including everyone.
And I think there is something that needs to be taken into consideration when you think about demand. There are producers and there is clients. So you cannot make products if you don't have clients willing to buy those products. So when it comes to fresh foods, which are unfortunately very often lacking in desert. Issue is that very often the demand is not there. So producers are a little bit unhappy to bring products that get rotten because they're very often fresh and let's say short shelf life products. So it's not only on the side of industry to change probably you need to involve also consumers in demanding more of those products. It's kind of chicken and egg problem, no?
I'd love to highlight some of the work that designers here at ID have been doing addressing food system challenges in Chicago. We do see there are lots of urban agriculture producers who are limited by the availability of land, the contamination of soil here in Chicago to grow food. And so Professor Marty Taylor has worked with an urban farm just up the street. It's about 2 or 3 blocks away, called Just Roots. And so he and his students have been working with Just Roots to design their production systems so that they can produce more food, utilize the materials to grow food that is healthy, and then that food is provided through a local food pantry that's just next door, and so that is freely available to people. And they have a number of sites around the city, but the physical designs of the production systems, right? So that's one way we're doing. Professor Tomoko Ichikawa, up at the top, worked a couple years ago with the City of Chicago and Chicago Food Policy Council to visualize the process of getting permits, right? So if you are a producer of food, a small food business, how do you actually get permitted to sell your food into the city? It's a very complex process. And so she and her students used visual communication design to simplify that process and make it easier for these small businesses to understand how they could access and get the permits to sell food. We at the Food Systems Action Lab are working to visualize the food system, the institutional food procurement channels. I think one of the things that we need to think about is what is the value of food, right? And like we put a dollar value on food, but there are businesses or nonprofit organizations within the city. So I'm thinking about a group called Dion's Chicago Dream that has gotten a lot of attention because they are sourcing food from businesses, from grocery stores, and have built this incredible logistics infrastructure to get food and provide it for free to people within different communities, particularly on the south and west sides of the city. And so that's a business design, right? They have adopted a different way of thinking about what is the value, right? And providing food at no cost to people across the city. At the state level, we have the local food purchasing program. And that program was designed to source food from local farmers all across the state, rural, urban, particularly what they call underserved farmers. I think I heard the number that 50% of the farmers who participate in that program have been in business for less than 3 years. Right? So it's really a lot of new businesses as well as some older businesses. And again, they are working with the with Feeding Illinois, so it's the state level food bank and food pantry system to get local fresh food into the hands of people in both urban and rural food deserts across the state. And so that includes mobile markets to bring that fresh food. But I think, an important point, and I think, Laurent, that element of education is important, right? So in these mobile markets, they also have demonstrations, right? So what do you do with this? Yeah. How do you prepare it in a way that your kids will eat it? Yeah, because they're usually the pickiest ones. So I think there are many examples of how we can leverage design to address this challenge, recognizing that it is so complex with both supply and demand dimensions that need to be simultaneously addressed.
Thank you very much for this round of answers. On the spot of the question from the audience, may I ask if there is maybe one last comment and question from the audience there, maybe to some of the speakers in particular, sort of a very final round of interaction, and then heading into the final reflection and remarks. Is there anyone that have any specific curiosity or question for our speakers? A very last.
Yes, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be able to see your face, because I've seen your work for years. I am from the south side of Chicago. I am a master gardener of 15 years and a master farmer for the last 7 years. I have taught with the USDA and PSA and the alphabets in order to be able to. But I am in a food desert because most of the programming that could be utilized stopped Fort Cook County, for which I'm in. Thornton Township has 13 cities within that township. There is 4 major high schools, 1 major farming program that goes that far. Not only that, there are not any major grocery stores. So teaching people that there is an alternative is very difficult because they don't have the opportunity. Most people in Thornton Township have to travel 13 to 18 miles to a local grocery store. The majority of those cities are in depressed areas. I have worked with the University of Illinois in doing school gardens for the sake of just being able to use it as a STEM program to be able to get funds, because they're growing food that they can't take inside of the schools based upon the Board of Education contracts. Not only in terms of that, we've got tons of urban farmers because Illinois, the large producers, are only the ones that are being able to get the distribution. My question and task for this particular organization, how would you aggregate all of these smaller growing entities and to be able to get them to a point where they could have mass distribution to be able to supply to some of the areas and also to get these particular types of contracts. We have started, I love roots, been part of CIFPAC for 1,000 years, but they're not in terms of it able to deal with all of the legislation that is basically fronting with them. Water is an issue in terms of being able to supply for these particular small aggregations in terms of things. If you cannot get 5 people together that have at least an acre or 5 acres of land, there is no way to be able to do a large mass production. I am beating the bushes, trying to get people to understand that you can grow enough food in your backyard to be able to feed your family for a year. I am teaching canning. I am teaching freezing. But there is not a lot of funding available, and I'm poor too. So looking for systems, designs that will help to mitigate some of this, take some of the pressures off, because the land grants university, they got the money, but it's not being passed down.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments. There is a significant missing middle infrastructure that we have to make those connections between small producers, both in the urban as well as rural environments here in the state, and it's true also across the US. And there has not been as much investment, as you say, because of vertical integration and consolidation that we've had in our food supply chains. And so one of the things that we are working on right now is looking at the infrastructure gaps for processing and aggregating food from small producers. So we're working in collaboration with the Illinois Extension and a number of other entities around the state to map where farms are located, what infrastructure is currently in place, what infrastructure is missing, and create a list of investment opportunities for aggregation, processing, and this consolidation for small farmers. There's also the land connection through the Conservation Fund is purchasing land on behalf of some local urban farmers in suburban Cook County for them to try to scale their operations so that they can meet some larger supply needs. And you know, this is an incredibly thorny problem, right? Because it's the scale often does not attract the interest of larger private equity investors, right? Because they're interested in their ability to scale. And so I think we need both public money, philanthropic money to bridge this gap. But we also need private investors to come in and think about the holistic value that's being created in terms of health benefits, environmental benefits, as well as the economic benefits that can be created. I feel like this is like a super long conversation, and I think it's something that we desperately need and that we here at ID are working on, and I'd love to continue the conversation with you. Okay, Michele.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Conversation can continue, I think, long and long. I would be more than happy to continue my night time here listening to all such an inspiring and it makes me reflect a lot on different perspectives. As I was mentioning to the panelists before starting, we are not expecting to give you and to give to the audience an answer to the big question that we pose in designing this debate, but moreover, reflecting on posing the proper questions, as we always are used to say. So I'm very thankful. I want to be very honest to sharing my gratitude to all the panelists for intervening in such a complex also debate. So thanks a lot to Wesley, to JP, to Laurent, to Margaret, and to Anna. A big applause to all of you. I'm not hearing the applause, but I'm feeling it. And I want to call my, on the other side of the ocean, Anijo Matthew, to just have a final remarks to let you then continue the rest of your day. And again, thank you for also having us, having me and Professor Zulem and Prof. Meroni from this side of the world. Thank you, Anijo.
Thank you, Michele. Thank you all for joining. Clearly, the mics didn't get the memo that they have to transmit all the way to Milan, so we are firing all of them. So thank you. You can see the blanket is coming in. It's going to get quite white soon. Consul General, do you want to come up and just say a few words before we go out for lunch?
Thank you very much, Professor. I'll take the opportunity just to thank again all the participants for such an inspiring, engaging conversation that really set the pace for further cooperation in this domain. I mean, not all the answers have been, not all the questions have been answered today, so there is still a lot of room for continuing our conversation. Just a couple of points. that really my mind while listening to the speakers. When I was a kid, there was a game that I used to play with my cousins during the long Christmas holidays. It was about, we were working together and trying to define the profile of the king of the world. So we would start, what's the color of the air, what's the color of the ice, and then we were moving which school he has to attend, and what kind of job he has to do in order to become the king of the world. There was someone who was saying, we need a warrior, we need a sportsman, and we need a lawyer. And I would say in a time when we face the risks of the dots being erased rather than connected, then, and this is a question I pose to you, what's the profile that the king of the world should have? Someone helping us to connect the dots rather than erase the dots. So, candidatures are open for a designer, I guess. My second point is that there is a subliminal effect whenever you utter the word food many times. And the subliminal effect is that the hunger rises. So I'll leave the floor to you to lead us to the food. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you, Counsel General, and thank you for your questions. Those are really important questions. Here at ID, we say that outrage must be followed by methods. You can't just be outraged by something. And so I urge you to spend some time talking to our students, faculty, all of our guests, Margaret, Lauren, JP, Veslin, and Anna, and Michele, and Francesco. Thank you so much for doing this. The Italian folks from Milan are going to switch off after this, but I invite you to come upstairs to our community kitchen to have some lunch with us before the storm gets worse. The best way to do this is for you to go to my right. You can see there is a pink stairwell that you can take. That's the easiest route. There's also a lift or an elevator out there that you can take. But if you are adventurous, you can go up these stairs and see our exhibition, our classroom spaces, but you just have to go all the way around until you see the community kitchen. So the easier route, take these steps up. The more interesting, adventurous hike is up here up these stairs. Thank you all. Thanks for coming to ID. I hope you have a good lunch and good conversations. Thank you.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.